Alright, hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about the setting of a story. Now, we should all be pretty familiar with setting, but I want to review just to make sure that we all remember it, and I want to talk about making inferences with our setting. Okay, so let's look at the definition of setting to start out with. So the setting should be the time, alright, and the place where a story happens, okay? So time and place. Also, usually when we talk about setting, we kind of talk about like the situation, okay? For example, with our story Harrison Bergeron that we've been talking about, we might say that the setting is the future in America in a dystopian society, okay? So give a little bit of information about that environment as well. All right, now a few things to note. The time period can refer to a different time in history, for example, the Civil War, or to a specific time of the year, like Christmas or summertime, or a time of day, like morning or nighttime. So if I asked you about time and setting, I could mean one of those things or all of those things. So you kind of have to look at the clues that you're given about the setting. All right, now the place can be a specific country, city, town, room, or type of natural setting, like a mountain or a river. Now, as I mentioned before, you're going to have to make inference about setting a lot, okay? Authors aren't going to just start out their books like, this story is taking place in year 2072 in the future country of Uzbekistan, okay? In a land where animals have become our rulers. Okay, they're not going to start with all that information. You usually kind of have to make inferences and figure out exactly what the situation is. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. All right, here's my first one. John had been climbing for 45 minutes straight, and he did not stop climbing as he said, "Well, I never get to the top." Okay, so in what type of setting does this take place? So I'm looking at it, and I don't see any information about time, right? I don't see a time of year or time of day or anything like that. But I think I could figure out place. To me, it sounds like he's on a mountain, okay? Because he's been climbing, and he says, "Well, I never get to the top." So it sounds like we're on a mountain. All right, now let's look at another one. And for these, y'all are going to start making some inferences on your own. I have figured out that I walk or run 3 or 4 miles at every game. The distance from the dugout to the plate is short enough, but I cover it a good many times. In addition, I run into the outfield to meet relief pitchers coming in from the bullpen and relieve them of their jackets, take jackets to the pitchers who are fortunate enough to get on base, and deliver the resin bag to hitters when they call for it. And none of this takes into consideration the wear and tear on my back from bending over to pick up bats. All right, so what type of setting does this take place? Everyone take a second and answer. All right, so hopefully we figured out that that was a baseball field. We had a few clues here. The dugout, the plate, the outfield, pitchers, bullpen, hitters, all right, bats. Lots and lots of clues to figure out that this was a baseball field. Okay, now let's look at my next example. And this time I want you thinking about time. I shivered as I stepped outside, pulling my jacket closer around me. I tucked my scarf around my ears as a few snowflakes swirled around my head. All right, so same thing. Take a second and tell me what time of year it is. All right, so hopefully we all said that our time of year was winter. Okay, we have a few clues: shivering, scarf, snowflakes. Okay, all these things sound like it's probably winter time. All right, now, one of the hardest inferences to make about setting can be the time period, okay? And that means this is happening in the past, present, or future. And a lot of times you can figure out a little bit more specific information, but you want to be able to tell those 3 general categories. All right, so let's look at my first paragraph here. It was April, and outside in the dark, the rain whipped against the windows of our tavern, making a sound like muffled drums. We were concentrating on our dinner, and everyone jumped when the door slammed open. It was my brother Sam, wearing a uniform. "We've beaten the British in Massachusetts," he shouted. Who's beaten the British? My father asked us. Us, the Minutemen, Sam replied proudly. All right, so is this occurring in the past, present, or future? So looking at this, I see some information about time in general. It's April, we're in a tavern, but past, present, or future. So I think there's a few clues to help us figure out. One, they're sitting in a tavern, which sounds kind of like an old-timey word, even though they still exist to some extent. We have this thing, we've beaten the British in Massachusetts. So we know that we're fighting a war in America against the British in Massachusetts. Okay? And he calls himself the Minutemen. Okay? Now, I know y'all have done early U.S. history before, so we should be able to figure out that this is definitely occurring in the past. Okay? All those clues help us make that inference. All right, now for this next one, you're going to tell me time and place on your own, so make sure you're paying close attention. Okay? Father and Broyle pitched the hay into the haymow, while Almanzo took the water jug to the well. He pumped, then jumped and caught the gushing cold water in his hands and drank. He carried water to Father and Royal, and he filled the jug again. Then he rode back in the empty hay rack and trampled down another load. After 3 weeks of making hay, all the haymows were crammed to bursting and the meadows were bare. Then the rush of harvest time. There was no rest and no play for anyone now. They all worked from candlelight to candlelight. Mother and the girls were making pickles. They were drying corn and apples and making preserves. Everything must be saved, nothing wasted of all summer's bounty. All right, so when you answer this, I want you to think about time period, so past, present, or future. Okay, place. What kind of general type of place do you think we're in? All right, and then also, you could probably give me time of year if you think carefully about some of our clues here. Okay, but I'm mainly looking for time period and place. If you can give me time of year as well, that's awesome. All right, so everyone take a second and do that for me. All right, so hopefully we've answered that. You should have said that the time period was past, okay? We're getting water out of a well. Some people still use wells, but we don't usually pump them by hand and, fill up the jugs to have our water, okay? We also have everyone working from candlelight to candlelight, okay? And we have them making pickles, drying corn, making preserves, which definitely some people still do, but it's more something that people did in the past when we didn't have grocery stores. So when we take all those clues together, we can tell that it's probably the past. Now, place, I probably would have said a farm, right? They're pitching the hay into the haymow. They talk about, their meadows. They talk about harvest. It definitely sounds like a farm. Now, for time of year, which I told you could also figure out, I probably would have said end of summer or early fall, okay? We have apples, which we kind of associate with, coming around in the fall. They say they don't want to waste summer's bounty, so it sounds like summer has ended or is ending, and they're trying to kind of save everything before it gets cold, okay? All right, so hopefully that gave you a nice refresher on setting. We're going to be making a lot of inferences about setting in our book, The Giver, so we definitely want to have all of that good to go because you're going to have to make a lot of inferences. Okay. All right, so have a good rest of your day and do all your homework.